I am all hooked up here. Y'all hear me okay? Because I can talk loud, so hold on, I have to get my Bible going because I left my real one sitting on my desk in my office. Well, it's electronic. Don't get me started. You know exactly what I mean. All right, so good morning. It has been a while since I've done this, but I really I've been seeing a lot of it. I'm going to pick on my buddy Cliff here in a minute, but in a good way. How many of you, through the course of your life, and I brought this just as a prop. I promise I'm not going to read through all this stuff. But the world we live in, everybody's looking for wisdom. I mean, they want somebody to tell them the secret sauce to be the best husband, to be the best father, to be the best businessman, the best salesman, the best the best plumber, any profession you can think of, anything people put their minds to do. Somebody's probably written a book about how to be the best one and shared all their wisdom of this is how it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have read most of these. Some of them are good, some of them aren't. And I'm going to put glasses on and off because I've gotten old. This is one of my favorites. It's called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. And that's literally the title. And that's what caught my attention was the title. I was like, I have to read this if it's a business book on orbiting the giant hairball. The whole premise of it, though, is Hallmark. Hallmark is arguably if I said go buy a Christmas card for somebody, what brand would you think of in most cases? I mean, Shoebox, which is owned by Hallmark, you'd come up with probably something that has Hallmark stamp on it because they basically invented and figured out a way to get into our wallets heavier for Valentine's Day and Easter. And they went and they looked at our Bible and went, hey, we'll just sell cards for all this stuff. How many of you have a little thing at your house right now, because a lot of you guys have wives, that they put the Christmas cards that they get from other people so that they're part of your decorations? Yeah, ours actually looks like a tree and it holds, I don't know, 10, 12, it's yay high. And then it becomes a collage on the little table as you come into our house. That sits there and it's so many pictures and it's great. She'll hand me the card and go read this. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. But then they're spread out. Well, how many of you really take a lot of time? Come on, give me grief there. But she'll spread those out. And Hallmark figured out the wisdom of how to be the best card company in the world. I mean, the dudes and the ladies that run that thing print money, literally. So then there's other ones. Let's see, I brought one of my favorites. Here it is. Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. As a kid, this was the greatest escape for me when you'd read this. Everybody had a copy growing up. And do everybody know this book? Anybody not know this book? And that's okay. Really? Where did y'all go to school? Oh, sorry. No, I'm not even going to get into that. It's poems, and they're funny. They make you laugh, but it's just clean poetry for kids. And this is what got me into reading, and then of course comic books. But if you go to a bookstore or go online, go to Amazon and put in self-help or business wisdom books, you probably would take hours just to scroll through all the options out there. So why do y'all think that is? Why does everybody want somebody to tell them how to do things? What do you think? Easy? Okay. Learn from others? No, we don't know it? Okay. I think it's all of that, but I think ingrained in us, those of us that are believers, is we have an intrinsic, we know that we're going to screw this thing up. I mean, my Bible is very clear on my phone and the ones in front of you guys, although I see it's a lot of phones. It's very clear that we really don't have answers. And the problem that I see in our society is people that are still blind and have no idea about Christ. In fact, give us grief about and I'll talk about Mark Farrell some today. And if you want to pray for somebody that doesn't know Christ, Mark Farrell. I told him, and he knows every time I do this, that he is one of my examples. I love him with all my heart. He is the name God has put on my brain to win to Christ. Not because of anything I do, but because of who he is. And Mark is a proclaimed atheist. I mean, and he will ask me many Mondays, he will ping me on Teams and say, so how was magic service this weekend? Or he'll ask if we, were there any miracles performed? I mean, he knows the Bible enough to really poke well, but he is searching for how do I be better at this? In our world, the reason all these books sell and the reason they look everywhere except the Bible is they want what we found, which is I know where wisdom sits. On any topic that we want to talk about, including plumbing, it's all in my Bible about how to be better at it. Leadership is it's why all my books are. It's what I've been doing since I was in my 20s. Right now, and this is not a brag, but I just want you to understand where my brain is on this, is today I work for a company called Tenet Health. Been there for 4.5 years. And I run IT operations for the company. That's 55 hospitals, 25 surgical hospitals, 450 surgery centers, 500, probably 600 by the end of next year, doctor's offices, and all the connective tissue from an IT standpoint. Now, that's not for me to brag. It's for me to go, holy crap, why would they give me a responsibility like that when they know who I am? But the funny thing is when I did my interviews and was talking about it, and they were asking what my leadership style was. And I said, I believe in a servant leadership style. I said, I am a believer in Christ. I said, I'm not going to beat the people up with it, but they're going to know who I am, and I am going to lead in that way. I said, I'm a strong leader. I care about the people as much as I care about myself. Conflict doesn't exist in my group. I get rid of it. And it's amazing how I talk to young leaders and they're like, yeah, I can't do it that way. And it's, even though they see it be successful, because they can't understand that you don't need all of this and what everybody else in this world says, when I've got an example for what I'm trying to do right there in my Bible. Okay, I want you to take a minute before we get into this, at your table, I would like you, and so there's pens, you can write on the back of something, don't care. One guy at your table, scribe, this is going to be 5 minutes. I want you to think of, if I said in the worldview, not the Christian worldview, but the worldview, who is a name, this needs to be somebody that anybody would probably know the name, who would they say, boy, that guy's got a lot of wisdom, okay? Second, in the Christian community, is it that same name? Is it a big name? Or is there somebody else you'd say, wow, yeah, most of these guys would know this name because of whatever reason. And then at your table, and you'll get to pick one, have a quick, someone personal that maybe nobody else in this room knows, that you're like, that's a wise person. And I'm going to pick on a couple of tables here in a minute, but you got 5 to 8 minutes to do that. Yeah. I turned it off. We could talk about this all day, I know. So, in the big broad world, what are names that came up? We'll just kind of throw this one out there. What names came up? The table up here, I'm going to put that they came up with one, Oprah. Man, and they made the comment of every time she goes on, if she says, I'm reading this book because it's fabulous, it changed my life, that author just became a millionaire. I mean, just like that. Or a product, or you get a car and you get a car. She is seen as a modern day philosopher. I mean, people hang on what she says. What other people names came up that y'all see in the big bright world out there? Trump, yep, doesn't surprise me. Jordan Peterson, okay. Charlie Kirk, that's a really good one. I have that on my second list, but it works on the first one too, because he was a very predominant player in trying to get kids on campus to think for themselves, with, of course, very unapologetic of his belief in Jesus Christ. So very good. I threw a few out here from a political standpoint. So the people like Oprah, even them, they all have a political leaning, and sadly, our country's really gotten divided that way. So some of the ones I was chatting with some guys at the office over some of this, and it was Trump, Elon Musk, because he's done so much, he's got to be a pretty smart dude, and all that. And they, by the way, they a lot of people, as I talk to guys just at work, they equate intelligence with what they accomplish in their pocketbooks. And I think we all see that, oh, they're billionaires. They got to have done something right, or they've done something very, very wrong and gotten away with it. So, on the other side, I had one of the guys said, Bill Gates. I mean, look at all the things he created, Microsoft, and he gives all this money to charity, and he's got the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, although I think they just renamed that thing or something. But so he's got to be wise. I mean, geez, look at all the great things that they do. I'm really not sure. This was my friend Mark. He said AOC, and then he laughed. And he's very, very liberal. In fact, I call him a socialist. But I think he was just messing with me when I asked him that question. All right, so on the flip side, at our table, I brought up from a Christian standpoint who we see as being really smart and really wise in ours. And I had Chuck Swindoll. I've read some of his books. I like how he always goes back to our Bible and roots everything he tells you back into the Word. Who else came up? John MacArthur. Great choice. I've got some of his books. Franklin Graham, excellent choice. Gene Getz. Oh, yeah. My wife. How many of y'all do? I know. How many of y'all do the Bible that gets put together? I'm curious. Yeah. If you don't, my wife has been doing it, I swear, 10 plus years. She's gone end to end a couple times. It's the coolest. Just a little plug for him. If you haven't seen one of those Bibles, it's got a little QR code, and it has a daily devotional, and you read, and then you can read his notes, and then you can click on it, and it's like a 2 to 5 minute little vignette of him talking about what you just read. It's pretty impressive, pretty cool. All right, so. What? Well, and I was kind of curious if any of y'all would say, because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I look to Wayne. There's a reason we look to the pastors we have here, because he's trying to be funny, but I have no problem with that, because, well, maybe a little, but because I know the men God has put in charge of this church, there's no way they let George get up and share the word from that pulpit unless he's grounded in it. And of course, I'm thinking, being the president, what are you over there? I don't even know. Whatever leadership position he's in today at DTS, because it's changed a lot over the 13 years since I've known you. That is a biblically based model that we all look to. So I definitely think our pastor and the guys that we have here absolutely would go on my list. Okay. So historically, we would think Socrates or Plato or Aristotle. All through history, I got, when I was talking about this over the last few weeks, I got Karl Marx thrown in there, because people are still, to this day, I mean, it's happening in our country, they still believe for some reason that we can do socialism and it'll be different than all the failed experiments. So for me, man, somebody has bought into that is a wise, wisdom-filled person. Now, what about on the personal side? I'm just going to take a couple because I want to talk about my favorite one. But what about you guys? Has there been somebody in your life that, man, they poured wisdom into you and you're like, that is a wise dude or lady? Anybody willing to share? Paul Hahn. Good choice. Okay. David Wade. Very cool. All right, I'll take one more because I like hearing these. Oh, good choice. Yeah, fantastic. So we could probably go through here, and a lot of the dudes in this church their names would come up. For me, there's two names, and that's Gary Heisey. He was my VP, senior director. I don't remember what his title was. Depends on when I was working for him at EDS. Christian man, hard as nails. Still a mentor today. He's in his early 80s. We have lunch or breakfast twice a year, and it's just for me to talk through what I'm doing business-wise. and him to poke holes in everything that I'm doing and give me advice that makes tons of sense. And then and some of you, it's been a few years, but would be my dad. And this is where I'm going to poke a hole in the whole educational piece. Is my father was a truck driver, World War II vet. He liked younger women, so when he was 40, he married my mom, who was 20, and they were married till he passed. They had 29-year marriage. He was a fantastic dad, but I had a much older father growing up. Most of my buddies' dads were in their 20s and 30s, and my dad was 50s. And ninth grade education, not real book smart, but he loved Jesus more than anybody I've ever met. I'll put him up against any pastor, anybody, because the guy that I went to church with, that took me to church as a kid, was the same dude on the docks of some backwater spot in New Orleans that you wouldn't walk the street at night because it's a warehouse district. And I watched him love people everywhere. And he talked about Jesus more than anybody I've ever met. I mean, it was ingrained into who my father was. And I have to tell you, as I've grown older, boy, you want to talk about the Spirit using that to motivate or to slap me upside the head and go, that's not how your dad would have probably done that. It's pretty impressive. And with that education, he would tell you right up front, I'm not a real educated man, but I know my Bible. And that's where I want to come back to on the wisdom front. And I'm going to share some verses here in a minute. But when you think about where you get your information, so for years, guys, I was reading one or two, and I still will pick up a business book. There's nothing wrong with this stuff. But when I'm looking here for how to do it the best, instead of, and not in my phone, but at my Bible, God, I can't believe I left it on my desk, instead, because I wanted to hold it up and do that. And not do the Joel Osteen thing. But some of y'all get that. That's what my dad taught me. Literally the wisest man I ever knew, not education-wise, but biblically, my dad had a verse and he could drop, anything I brought to him, he'd talk through it with me, and then he'd come back to here's how I see that, son, and here's what your Bible says about that. Have you thought about it? Have you prayed about it? And man, that was where his whole thing. So, any of you ever built a house or had one built? We got for the first time ever, when we moved back here 13 years, we built a house for the first time. We'd always bought them from somewhere else. Is that a lot of fun going and doing all those inspections and putting the stickers everywhere, making sure it's all right? And anybody? Yeah, it's crazy. We had a good time doing it, but it's like every time you go in, there's something here. But you really didn't. I went out and looked at it, but I couldn't have told you if they poured that foundation right. I guess if I was a concrete guy, I probably could look at the color or stick a stick in it like a cake. I don't know quite how they do it. Probably not that, but I have no idea how that is. But the foundation on our house, 13 years old, knock on this and thank you, God, it's still holding the house up. And I think when we come back to us and we start going, okay, where are we going to get our wisdom? Totally cool to read this stuff and help give you ideas, because I don't see any problem with it. But when this is your source, and I'm just using these self-help books, all these people we talked about that, Oprah really, I'm telling you, I hadn't thought of that one. And that one is just resonating in my head of when she tells people this is how to do something, or this is the book you should read, or this is the product you should buy, millions of people just go out and do it just because she said so. And I wonder sometimes if we don't put that foundation under our house, because those people are doing it, and I'm going to use the sand and the rock. They're building it on sand, guys. They're building all their thoughts and wisdom, and they're building that house that they're loving on the sand. And instead, because that wisdom under it, it's going to change tomorrow. Because if you go back and watch probably the last 20 years Oprah, I guarantee you've seen her shift how she thinks about things, how what books she's reading, maybe crystals over here and Lord knows what over there. But my Bible hasn't really changed there. And it even tells us that the root of wisdom is our word. Hold on a second. I actually have a verse here for that. Yeah, it says in Proverbs 1:7, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And I think that leads us there. And then in Proverbs 15:1, it says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh one stirs up anger. Knowing the fear of the Lord gets us started on, hey, let's be smart. And there is a wisdom that comes from knowing God's word. You know, my dad was that big example of that. But if you are not, and anybody who's heard me teach, I will say this every time, and I will hound on it, because I believe that if you are not reading your Bible and you are not praying, you have no foundation to absorb wisdom. I don't care where you get it. You can read, and we had Tony Evans came up at our table, who I've read his stuff. I loved it. I heard him speak. Cool dude. But if I'm basing it, and I love to hear George speak, and I love hearing all you guys that get up and share the word, that's fantastic. But if I'm not spending time on my own in the word and in prayer, you are never going to get there. Your wisdom is going to be weak. You're not going to know how to handle when those adversities come. And when this world that loves to tell us we're all crazy, and that we go to magic time on Sundays, that's guys. And I can't stress it enough of in your word, and Cliff will back me on this. We talk about that. He and Nate and I have been meeting for years on Friday mornings. We've had big group, and right now it's the three of us. But when we talk about what are you reading, it's usually what are you reading on the side, because we all like books, but it's where are you in your word? And we talk about it, and this is where I told you I was going to pick on you a little bit this morning. It came up, and I added it specifically because it resonated so loud. So when Isaiah is describing the coming of Christ, he's talking about him. He says he's going to be the great counselor. Hold on, I'm going to read it instead of. Yeah, here it is. In Isaiah, the Bible has a lot to say about wisdom, and I even wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. It said, just yesterday, Cliff Donovan was talking about a passage in Isaiah 9:6. It says, Christ being described as wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. And that wonderful counselor bit, when we were talking, well, first, Cliff had a really great thought on that. Is there anything else needed to describe who Christ is to us than those four descriptors? And I made a comment. I said, well, that's probably, if you looked up I am and the underline with the little dash, that's what it would say next to it is, but great counselor. That one, no one can argue with me about. Oh, people that don't know Christ would absolutely argue with me. But in this room, that resonated, guys, that if I'm looking for wisdom, why would I not go to the great counselor? Okay, I'll quit harping at you. Read and pray is what I hope you got out of that on your path to get to better wisdom. All right, so here, I want to switch gears for a second. Here's how, over the years, if you look at Solomon, if I said, based on what the Bible tells me, why is this dude ever? Because that's what he prayed. He was, hey, give me the wisdom to lead your people right. He didn't ask for all the riches and everything. God said, I'm just going to give you everything. And he did. And if any of you have read through Proverbs, and man, the dude spits, if you will. Is that the right term for the young people? There's not a lot of young people. He spits those Proverbs out of there, and just wisdom flows everywhere. But it's interesting that if you took him today, because we all find it interesting how money works. So if you go back, and I looked through history, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, they assume based on what he took and the way he did tax and everything, he was worth about he'd be a $300 billion person today. Andrew Carnegie, you all know that name, about $310 billion. Elon Musk, he's our only modern, we've got some other guys in that 300, but for the next step up, right now, based on how his stocks in his companies, he is currently, any given day, between $400 and $500 billion. They think he will be the first, barring something crazy, the first trillionaire of the modern era. John D. Rockefeller, because of Standard Oil, and it goes up and down, but everything he was into, they said he was probably somewhere in that 600 to 650 billion dollar range in today's dollars. Now we come to Solomon. In today's dollars, he would be somewhere between 2 and 3 trillion heir. At his peak, he had roughly 25 tons of gold a year coming in, and at $4,000 an ounce, that's 800,000 ounces. Yearly income just on his gold stuff, not anything else, would be about $3.2 billion. So he checks the boxes of God gave him wisdom. It's in our Bible. God gave him wealth. He would be the wealthiest person that's ever walked the face of the planet. And yet, when you go read his stuff, he even says, man, this stuff, none of this. He comes back to not the easy stuff, but he comes back to, guys, it doesn't need to be brain-surgery. You don't need to read, I don't know how many books I brought, 10, 15 books to be wise about something. You just need to kind of listen to what God tells you, because the rest of it's kind of fruitless, and I won't get into all that, but you know the verse. So I want to share a few of his Proverbs, though, that I wrote down that really, so it says, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. So some of you are raising, how old was your kiddos? 6 and 2. And I told him mine are 29 and 35. And by the way, Andrew is my new best friend because he said there's no way you have a 35-year-old. And I didn't have to pay him for that either. So I find that verse, though, and I'll be real transparent here. If I apply it to my father, yeah, I went astray. I had some wild years in my teens. But for the most part, I have done it badly, but I have followed Christ. I am not ashamed of the faith that I have in Jesus Christ. I'm just not. And as I've gotten older, I've taken on a few of the characteristics, the good ones of my dad, of I have no problem talking. I don't know if it's just the way God built me, but I have no problem talking to people, and I am just as comfortable talking about Christ. And, you know, whether they believe it or not, that's okay. That's not my job to sell him. I just have to open up my mouth. And as long as I keep that foundation of reading and praying, it makes that so much easier for me. I know you guys, that's a plug for your evangelistic thing you're going to teach. On the flip side of that, though, and I'll use my son as an example. I love my son with all my heart. His name's Alan. Named him after Alan Hurst, a guy that probably kept me. And I've shared this every time, so I got to add it. I've always said that if it wasn't for Christ, I'd be dead or in prison by now. Because if you'd have met me, 16, 17, 18-year-old me, y'all would have been like, yeah, that's maybe a lost cause right there. I gave my parents many a sleepless night because I just wouldn't come home. I'd be out doing all kinds of nefarious things. And Alan Hurst played baseball. He was a big sports guy. I played soccer, but partying and booze and some other things were way more important in my teens. And Alan Hurst, I was getting in with some guys that did the drugs thing. And I was open to that idea. And Alan Hurst, we have a best friend, he said, look, I'll go drinking with you as much as you want. He goes, if you start hanging out with those dudes, I can't. They'll kick me off the baseball team if I get caught with those kind of guys. And plus, that'll kill you. And as my best friend, so I was like, all right, booze are cheaper anyway, we'll just keep drinking. So that's the moral of that story. But very seriously, I went through that, but I came back to it because my father grounded into me. I watched it all the time. Now let's talk about my son, Alan, then I named after Alan Hurst. Love him with all my heart. He'd tell you if I brought him in here and if he'd come and sit, he'd say, yes, I believe in God. He'd tell you that. I was there when he was young. I believe it was a true confession of faith. He came to us on his own, told us why he was accepting Christ as his Savior. Very straightforward. We didn't pressure either one of our kids. We let them come to us, and then we quizzed the heck out of them, made them think about it, because we want to make sure it was the real thing. I absolutely believe that. But I also then believe that he drifted away, and I take responsibility. Now, Christ forgive me, and Alan says there's nothing to forgive, but I've asked him forgiveness too, is while he was young, there was a point, and I can't put my finger on it. I quit, and we talked about this yesterday. I quit going into my kids' room and praying over them at night. It's like they hit, 10, 12, whatever. And all of a sudden, for some stupid reason, I'm like, well, they're too old for this. And because my dad prayed for me, he told me all the time, I prayed, I'm still praying for you. Love you. You need to quit doing these things that you're doing, but I love you. I'm praying for you. And for some reason, I quit doing that with my kids. And my example was I knew how to work really hard and travel and do all the things to put a nicer roof and buy Christy a newer car and all that stuff. But I quit putting my attention where it should have been, which was teaching my children to follow Christ. Now, we had some things happen at our church that really tainted how he saw the assembly of, and Satan used it really strong to drive him away and keep him. And we talk about it every once in a while, but he's 35 years old. He's making his own decisions at this point. And now what's funny is I tell him all the time, I'm praying for you that God's going to make you uncomfortable until you come hang out with us at church and realize that your happiness is over there. Because he feels like he's just going through the motions. And he's a good guy, has a good job, takes care of himself, doesn't do drugs, none of that stuff. But I know for a fact that if I would have been better at it, his chances, because it would have been infused into him more. Doesn't mean that God can't choose to bring him back. But I take a responsibility because my Bible says I'm supposed to do this stuff, and I didn't. So you guys with young kids, I'm telling you, you pray over them until they say, I'm too old for this. And then you keep doing it, and you make sure, and again, I told you I was going to pick on Cliff, and he still came anyway. One of the things I asked him, he said, yeah, we're doing the pamphlet, the book that the church put out last week. He and his family are doing that together. And that's not to toot Cliff's horn. That's to say, guys, find reasons to pour into your kids through the word, and because that's where the wisdom, so that when they get to 56 years old, they're going to they'd be willing to stand up and go, my dad did this, and that's the reason that verse has power, because when I got old, it hasn't departed, and I still am interested in chasing who Jesus Christ is in my life. And I'm not real good at it, but I'm interested, and I will continue to try it. All right. Let's talk about another one. Let's see. Okay. So Proverbs 28:6 says, better to be poor and honest than rich and dishonest. Any examples in the world today that you would say, boy, that applies to X on either side of it? Better to be poor and honest than rich and dishonest. Fantastic. Great example. Do y'all know who that is? Yeah. Okay. I was going to say. Okay. I had politicians. Guys, I've interacted and rubbed shoulders with some. His name just jumped out of my. He's the associate pastor over at Cottonwood Creek Baptist Church, right off of 121. It's that big church over there. So John Mark Caton's been the pastor over there for 30 plus years. We were going to that church back when we were living in McKinney, and we were First Baptist Church of Fairview. And we were busting at the seams, and I won't tell you the whole story. It's really cool, but I don't have time for it. And we bought that piece of property and prayed over it, and it has just exploded. Well, the assistant pastor, who I feel really bad that I can't remember his name, he went into politics, still doing that, but he went to the Texas House of Representatives and represented his district down there for years and years. And he was, godly biblical man, and they were really poking him to maybe go for a federal run. And he actually said, no, I'm getting out. And basically it was, I've done all I think I can do without giving up some piece of my integrity. And there's no way I could go be successful at the federal level because of the expectation that the give and take, you got to give up some of that integrity. Now, do I think we have some good, honest politicians up there? I do think there are some. But sadly, I think more of them fall on the rich and dishonest. And if you go look at the bank accounts before they went into politics and got into DC versus now, and I don't care any of them, they are all, I believe, they are all multi-million dollars richer than they were when they went in. And I'm sorry, I know most of you guys work your behinds off. I'm very good at what I do. I am not, my bank account is not multi-millions of dollars just for what I do. And I have a big job. I mean, the only millionaires I know is my CIO and CEO, those C-suites at my company, and probably at the companies you guys. Those guys are all millionaires. I know what they make because I like to go out and look at the SEC filings and then give Pal a grief if we didn't get enough bonus money for our people because I know what hers is. And nicely, she's a friend, but I'll be like, so now I know how you bought that new house in Palm Beach, California. And she'll be like, Scott. And I'm like, I just noticed. So anyway, rich and dishonest. And to bring it back to us though, guys, how alluring does this world, because Satan's very interested in pulling us away from this, does he use the money hook? I mean, that is, we as men, and again, I'm going to use the very general, but most of us, as we've grown our careers, I know I have. We'll talk about Scott. That title and the income and the things that came with it, I based a lot of my who I am on that, especially when I was in my 20s and 30s. As I got into my 40s, God finally woke me up and started going, you're not doing this the way I wanted you to do it, and made some changes there. And what's funny is after I did that, my career actually took off way better than when I was doing it on my own, but that's a different story. But rich and dishonest, poor and honest. And I hate to say it, there's a lot of people that would be like, well, a little dishonest to be a little rich would be okay. And I think that's where putting that foundation with your word and your prayer comes back to keeping you grounded in how that works. All right. I got a couple more. Here we go. Proverbs 3:7. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. How easy is that? Or how hard, maybe, is a better way to say it. Do not be wise in your own eyes. How many of you guys, like me, have read books and you think you're pretty good at what you do? In fact, I was talking about, hey, I got this big organization that God's allowed me to run that my bosses think, man, I mean, my boss I was out in Florida Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week to take care of some personnel issues. And I had the COO of that market. We've got 5 hospitals out in Palm Beach, Florida. And by the way, it was nice and it was 70 degrees. It was really nice while y'all were freezing here. I walked into her office and we had never met in person. We'd been on the phone, and I sit down, and by the way, I always try to look for how to do introductions and that. And I noticed when she had said, hey, text me when you get here, that the number she'd give me in the email was an 859 number. Well, I have an 859 number, and most of y'all are going, so what? Well, that's Lexington, Kentucky. I've not run it. That is where the 859 number comes from. So I said, did you spend time? She goes, oh, born and raised there. I went to UK. So I now have another very good friend in Florida. But it was interesting when I was talking to her and asking about her, wasn't anything about her family or who it was. She did talk about UK. She talked about her education and which jobs she's had. And in business, that's, and me, I was talking about Christy and my 2 kids, and here's where we're vacation. And when it was her, after I had introduced myself and said, hey, this is what I do, and here's what I do. And her whole thing, she wanted to make sure that I understood, and I don't know if it's because I was older and done, she wanted me to understand that, hey, I'm the chief operating officer of these 5 hospitals, all of it. I mean, and not in a mean way, but that was who she was, is COO. I was a side bit that, I lead this group, but this is who Scott is. UK basketball, because football's done and we got a new coach, took yours. Or one of yours is a assistant, right? Coordinator. Hey, you know what? Not anymore. So, but for her, that was her, that's who she was. And for me, it was who I am is not any longer tied to what I do. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to lose my job. I like what I do. Cliff's been with me for a while. Definitely Nate. I went through a number of jobs for a while and I'm happy. I haven't updated my resume. I like what I do. But if it went away, I'm okay because that's not where I tie my life and my wisdom. That's not who I am. Does that make sense? I'm not, I thought you went time. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Did y'all hear that? It's not, my job no longer is my identity. And it was when I was younger. And instead, I want my identity to be Scott who follows Christ. And I'm still not good at that, guys. I mean, I can stand up here and tell you this, but I screw it up and, Nate and Cliff have heard everything you can imagine because they're my buddies and that's my guys. And that's a plug. But if you are not in a men's group, shame on you. You should be. We've got plenty of them. It matters. I can tell you if I call either one of those men with anything, I could run into anything in this life. And I got a couple of guys outside of just them that I know would call Alan or John, but I could call either one of them and they're going to be there. I don't care what it is. I know I'm going to have somebody come alongside. Anyway, just a plug for being in a men's group. You need it, guys. You need dudes. I love my wife. I would rather hang out with her than any of you. I love you guys. You lose every time if she's like, I want to hang out and you said it. I don't care. I'm going with her. But God has built us different and she gets that. And those are my dudes. So have some dudes because you need them. All right. And I'm in great shape because we're going to close with prayer in just a minute. I would like to bring this up because this one's really interesting. So a friend loves at all times and a brother is born for adversity. Proverbs 17:17. The wisdom here is what I was just talking about. And that's the reason I was so cool that they both were going to make sure and be here is those are my brothers. They may not be blood, but they have the same Christ, the Spirit of God in them that I do. And there is a connection that just works. And if you don't, and again, it doesn't need to be a men's group. As long as you've got some brothers that you can share, it makes everything, the good and the bad. They've been through 2 layoffs and job changes with me and with these guys, the things that we've talked about, it just matters. And for a wisdom standpoint, that's part of my wisdom team because I do some really stupid things. I'm grounded in my word. I pray, but bouncing it off other men who have the same mindset, who have the same Spirit of Christ, guys, it's a game changer as you're trying to make decisions. Because, Cliff's never going to come back if I talk again. But one of the things that Cliff, so it was probably, gosh, may have been 5, 6, even 7 years ago. Is it that? Yeah. So Cliff challenged me because we were talking and we had a couple other guys in the group. And the challenge was, and I don't remember all of it. I'll just give you the basics of it is we were talking about who Christ is and what would what would Jesus have us do? Not the bracelet, but hey, if we're thinking with Christ's mind through his word and our prayer, what should we be doing about the things going on in our world? How should we see this? And Cliff challenged me because I was coming across, and I'm going to challenge all of you with this because it really hit me, as Scott, is that the Jesus of the Bible or is that American Jesus? Because in our country, I have interacted with guys and gals across my group, in my companies, friend groups, that they have decided, and I'm not knocking our president, but it's like they've just said, oh yeah, because Trump held a Bible, he's just, and he says, hey, yeah, we say Merry Christmas. And I love that. I'm not knocking it. But the dude is not an example I want my children looking to for how to follow Jesus Christ, because it feels like lip service. It goes back to the politician thing. Do I believe there are saved, good Christian politicians. I do. And I think so many of them are at a lower level because if they go to Washington, they have to give up that integrity. And where I'm going with that is I challenge you when you're looking at this world that you look at the Jesus of the Bible. And again, back to that's the wisdom you chase versus all the talking heads that say the right things and we like what it sounds like. And don't get me wrong, I love that there was something on Facebook the other day. It's the president standing in front of a tree and he says, "We say Merry Christmas in this house," or something like that. And I'm like, that's great. And his marketing people said, "This will reinforce your base if you put this picture on Facebook and we put this caption." He went, "Do it." And I believe he believes that. But I want to make sure, guys, that when you're looking at this world and where you're applying your wisdom, that it's out of the Word, not out of what everyone has decided is an American Jesus. And that may tick some of you off, and that's okay, because I'm really good at that thing too, if I try. But for me, sitting down and having Cliff challenge and go, "Scott, where in your Word does it say that's how Jesus would really," because we were talking politics and a bunch of stuff, and it hit me right between the eyes. And ever since, I've used this example with a lot of people, is I have to, when I start to latch on to something, especially from a political, or I'm like, whoa, is that really starting that fight? Is that really how Jesus would have gotten to those people? Or would it have been live it out in front of them, tell them who Jesus is, and all the rest of that stuff will work itself out. I had, again, back to Mark, he likes to pick on me, but he's quit in a lot of these areas because he said and this is really, it scares me to death because he tells me he thinks I may be the first genuine Christian he's ever interacted with. And boy, I look at my life and go, bad example. Let me give you, this is a Chuck Swindoll book, and I'd like you to read it instead. But it's because I don't argue with him. I tell him what I believe, I let him poke holes, and I still tell him I love him and who Jesus is. And now we're 4.5 years into this friendship. He works for me now. We were peers at first. He thinks I'm the best boss he's ever had because I don't beat around the bush when I like something or when I don't. I haven't let bad performers stay in the group. I've rewarded the good ones. And he's like, wow, this dude's really genuine. And for 4 years, I've shown up and been the same guy. I say all of that to make sure people watch you. Where are you getting your wisdom from? Is it what everybody else says, or is it what your Bible says? All right, we've got about 5 minutes. What I would like you to do is over the next 5 minutes at your table, just somebody can either lead it or a couple of guys. I'd like you to pray over your table for each other that God would drag you into his word and give you, because sometimes, and no one throw any rocks, there are times that I've been in my Bible and boy, it feels dusty. And that's usually me more than him because I'm doing it because I feel I have to. And I'm just, okay, I got to read today. I'm going to read this and I'm going to do it. I got five minutes between meetings. I'm just going to real quick read this so I can check a box. It's not a checkbox, guys. It's you need to have a spot that you commit. This is my time. I'm going to read. I'll pray about the things he puts on my heart. My wife is a great example. I don't know about you guys, but she shames me to death because she has been doing it every morning. I could probably count it on these 10 fingers in 35 years, the mornings I haven't seen her at that kitchen table with an open Bible. And you want to talk about when you're hurrying out the door and you're like, yeah, I'll work that in later. And my wife is taken and she gets up an extra 30 minutes early so that it's there and she has that opportunity. Do it. It's a game changer. Okay. Pray at your tables for each other, for that God would drag you into his word and that he would give you his wisdom, not this world's. Thanks, guys.